Good morning. Okay, well, I've talked a lot about what's going on, what I see in the world, what's happening, how related it is to that mind virus type profile that looks a lot like narcissism or like psychopathic or sociopathic behavior. But what I haven't really done is kind of mapped out I've mapped out the profile for the low level relationship and what that kind of looks like, but maybe on the world scene I can go back over it and let people kind of have a general idea of what that profile is and what it would look like in a more of a worldwide setting. So one of the first tactics, it's not in this order in how they apply it. Usually the first thing they do would be under love bombing. It's when they're telling you everything you want to hear, telling you how special you are, and they really just kind of lift you up and try to win your favor. And during that window of time, they also do researching, and they get to know you in a world setting. What they would be doing is stuff like the Cambridge Analytics. They would be researching you, obtaining data, and gathering information on you, and trying to figure out where your weaknesses are for later use. So that's the researching. So love bombing is more like, it's kind of, I used to say that they kind of do these in threes. So it'd be a kind of a combination of things. And typically what I would tell people who are being victimized, because I have flashcards, is I'd tell them after the interaction with the narcissist, go back to the flashcards and figure out what 3 things they've used. It's not always 3, but there's usually no less than 3 things that they've used. So some of the things that are done, I guess I'll just go through these. It won't be in the order that they do them. I guess I can try and tell you how these things interact afterwards to make it a little less confusing. So not in any particular order. Empathy cultivation is one of their biggies. They like to play on your heartstrings. Again, they've researched you. They understand you. They know what makes you tick. And so they know how to cultivate empathy. H.D. Tudor once said, hope dies last. And part of that's because they're playing on all of your heartstrings, but really nothing that they've told you will play out. And but they'll play on that. They'll play on your weaknesses also, things that you may feel deficient in, or areas where you feel weak. They may give you hope that those things will be improved. So that could be your finances, that could be your future, that could be student loans, places. But they rather than necessarily directed towards you, it's more about making it like a social thing, right? So we can help everyone, and don't you want to help your fellow man, right? Or help the poor guy that's coming across the border because he's a victim, but that's not necessarily, when you look at the reality of it, it may or may not be the case, right? You don't really know. All you know is that you're voting not on your feelings, or you're supporting based on your feelings and not based on data, not based on real information. And that's because they've pulled on all of your emotional strings to make you, in effect, a puppet. Threatened loss is another one. So in a political spectrum, yes, there could be like, we'll take something away from you, or this thing. Typically there'll be some projection in this particular one, which we'll talk about projection, but they'll identify the opponent and make the opponent seem like that will be the person. So there's kind of an aspect to this. There's a projection and a triangulation, and I'll explain all these. It kind of goes with the threatened loss that I've seen. So they'll make it look like their opponent is threatening you with loss to get you to side with them. So there's your triangulation, and the projection is because the fact is that the person that's selling this line of crap is usually the person that's actually going to be taking whatever that is away from you. So nothing's what it seems, essentially. There's all this weird smoke and mirrors and mirroring that's happening. It's like walking through one of those crazy houses of mirrors, if you've ever gone to one of those, where nothing is what it seems. So there's threat and loss being used, but it's usually being projected onto an opponent. In many cases, there could be lots of talk of war, war threats, and stuff like that, to get people to feel unsafe, so that they'll side with the person. So threat and loss, in this case, it's usually not going to be coming from the person that has this condition, because they want to look like the good guy, and that's where plausible deniability comes in. Okay. So character assassination, that one seems pretty obvious. Character assassination can be very subtle also. And that's where you start to get triangulation and plausible deniability. So rather than attack somebody directly, where some candidates or some people in government may choose to attack directly, and a lot of times that actually makes them look bad, even if they're right, or even if the people that support them think they're right. So what they'll do is they'll have someone else do it for them. And that's where you have minions, the minions card, right? So they're minions, or they're people that they're followers, or they'll get the people to that support them to do it, so that they can say, I never said that. And there's your plausible deniability. But at the same time, the character assassination is occurring, and the person is being cut down. Typically there will be no basis in reality, or there may not be a basis in reality of why this person's being a character assassinated. Meaning, they're being made to look like something that they may or not necessarily be, but very bad things are being said about them. And they're basically being shamed in this particular situation on a political or world sphere. It'd be obviously more public. But character assassination can also be subtle. Sometimes it's behind the scenes. So you may have groups that, through the research, don't fall into alignment with what they want a narrative to be, and so they'll silence them. So character assassination, it's almost like there can be it's a two-pronged effect. So you may have on one side, it could be very vocalized destruction of this person's character in a public setting, coupled with silence, where the person can't do anything or say anything about that, because silencing is another tactic. Okay. So boundary violation is another one. And boundary violation, you can see that from a lot of the spying stuff that's gone on. You can see that from us going in other countries kind of asserting themselves over others. In a relationship setting, that's, the person just totally invades your space and gets into your, they get up really close into your face. But it can also be about them moving things around. If you have something somewhere, they in a relationship, for example, they could just throw their stuff all over things that you care about. Or let's say you go in and you pick up the room and you make it really nice and neat, and they'll just go through and throw things all over it, almost right away, so that you're, 1 minute you're happy about it, the next minute they've just totally violated your boundaries and just destroyed something. So basically everything belongs to them. That's the way they see it. That's just the way they see it. There's no boundaries in their world, because everything is there on their behalf for their use. And the way it's been characterized by the people that have that condition, that have been willing to share, they really see us as more like gaming NPCs or cardboard cutouts. Really, there's nothing on the other side as far as they're concerned. We might as well be a piece of cardboard or just a scrap of nothing. I mean, really, we're just a useful appliance, which is word for word HD tutor, a useful appliance. So they have no care or qualms about violating boundaries. And obviously in the world setting, that would be going into territories, taking what you want, manipulating the people in those regions, overthrowing different regions, putting in minions, right? So that's kind of how that works. Attrition and exhaustion, that's a really big one. You're going to see that a lot in the lawsuit sectors and stuff. Or for example, that is often coupled with character assassination. So they'll say something about you that's totally untrue. You don't have a voice. You can't say anything. You can't debate it. Or even if you try to debate it, it won't matter. They'll continue and they'll continue and they'll continue, and then they have their minions continue to say the same thing over and over again. And that rolls into gaslighting because it's there to incite you, to make you upset, which then goes into crazy making, which is where now you look crazy because you're losing your mind, because you're being attacked on all these fronts with something that's completely untrue, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And then they point at you and say you're crazy because you had the audacity to stand up for yourself. That's the cycle. It's a horrible cycle, but they wear you down. So in the legal setting, they'll drag on lawsuits. They'll call friends of friends of friends. I think there's one right now where they've even interfered with our police departments and stuff. It's so involved. It's whoever can be bought, and people don't understand. They either are buying into they're buying into what they're being told because they're also tricked, but they don't realize that in the end, this is bad for them also. This is bad for everyone. So attrition, they just wear you down and wear you down and wear you down. So they may sue. There could be they could have 20 different lawsuits coming at you. They could have a judge that's paid off. They could have friends all over the place. They can have people crank call you, cold call you, and that now we're starting to move into, this also goes into, like I said, it goes into crazy making and gaslighting, where they stay calm the whole time they're doing it, and then you flip out, so they can point and say, did you see that? All we're doing is just making a statement. We're super calm. Don't you see him? He's screaming at the top of his lungs. He's totally lost his mind. Well, that's because he's been whittled away at on many fronts. You feel like you're being attacked, but a lot of times it's very subtle, and so you can't pin it down, and you can't point at anything very specifically, and it will drive a person to react emotionally. And it's really key and critical for people that are having an attrition attack, having somebody try and wear them down in that way, to remain calm and to just try to stick to facts. Because if they get you to where they've gaslighted you and it's worked and it's gone to make you crazy or crazy making, in the end you will look the fool. This is really important for people that are in divorces with people like this also, because you need to contain and continue to look calm, and just know that if you stick to the facts and you continue to point out the inconsistencies in what they're saying, that's how you stay credible, and they don't. But that takes time, and that's a big problem, because they're very good at this, okay? They're very good at this. Splitting personalities, one of my all-time favorites. These people literally they can put a face on, okay, so they've researched pretty much all the people that are in their little network, and they research the people that are their targets, and they are some of the best actors of the world. So it's really no surprise that some of these problems are coming from actors, literally. Because they are some of the best actors. In fact, some of the people you think are the most amazing people, you're going to find out they're not the most amazing people. They're one of the worst monsters ever. And the fact is, they are actors. And whether they're an actor or not, they're still actors. And they have a million masks. So they literally can just switch on, switch off. A lot of the narcissists too, they have all kinds of different groups. So they can go hang out with gangsters in the 1 minute, and then go hang out with the elitist people in the next. and they'll fit right into both groups because they'll literally just switch. It's very strange. But splitting is also, it's more of a psychological term also, where you could have split personalities and stuff. Some of the people that study the technology believe that if you split the personality, somehow you'll be able to access more powerful abilities or some nonsense. Maybe that's true, but who cares? That's not a healthy way of handling anything. So some of the old MK Ultra stuff, which yes, that's been made public. Bill Clinton brought that out. Part of that was also they will fracture a person, and they fracture a person through trauma. So, and who's to say that a lot of these people didn't actually go through that experience, and they started with the splitting through that because of the trauma, and then we continue to create that trauma and recreate that trauma until we heal and learn to heal that trauma. Okay. So splitting personalities, where that impacts you is especially whoever's their target is going to see their ugly, awful face, and everybody else around them will see their super nice, awesome, warm and loving whatever face. And so they'll usually just have maybe a handful of people that they're really working on destroying, or they just get a kick and thrill out of, and that's who they're getting their energy from. And a relationship, what that looks like is, let's say the spouse is a victim, and everyone else in the family and all their friends, everyone else thinks the person's super awesome. And that's how you end up with stuff like Unabomber lover stuff, right? Where maybe Unabomber's not the best example, but you do hear about all these people that are supposedly, I'm going to say supposedly because right now nobody knows what's really going on as far as what we've been told. But oftentimes, people are like, there's no way I didn't see that coming. This person was the nicest person. They were totally active in the community. They worked for the church. They worked in the schools. Nicest guy ever, nicest girl ever. And it turns out that they're harming kids, or it turns out that they're trying to harm some people, or they just completely snap and lose it. So whether it's a true split personality or not, they have split faces, and they have different ones that they use for different things. And that's how they get their energy, because they just switch. It's like, oh well, I can get along with anybody, that guy. Except for he doesn't mean like, I can be cool with everyone. It's more like I literally switched the mask I'm wearing based on the group that I'm in. So what that leads to is whoever's their target, it creates a definite crazy making for them, because anytime they reach out for help, they can't get help because nobody believes them. So that's what you see with some of let's say the pedophilia scenarios. A victim may try and reach out, but the entire community thinks the person's great. Okay, but they haven't seen this other side. So this person then, right? Immediately they've been gaslit. They've it's led up into crazy making. They try and reassert their power, right? We talked about that yesterday. And then what happens? Swarm effect. So then, bam, they've been set up. And so now they're trying to take a stand for themselves, try to take their power back, and boom, instantly we have character assassination, we have minions kicking in, and everybody that's drank the Kool-Aid is now targeting this already dramatically victimized person. They're not willing to hear what they have to say because it doesn't match up with everything else they know. It's so complicated. Okay, weaponizing the past. Weaponizing the past is a big one, just because it has kind of an interesting variety of things. First of all, they've just straight deleted a lot of our history. So much data is we're not even allowed to see. Like if you think about the Vatican, like there's data that's kept in those vaults. We're not, people aren't even allowed in there. You have all this stuff that's like super high level confidential, safety and security for the nation. We have patents that are hidden. So much stuff is hidden. Okay, so at that level, on the world stage level, it's not just weaponizing the history, the past. It's also about hiding it. Okay, but in the fact that they've hidden it, they've also weaponized it, because what you don't know can be weaponized against you, and that's what happens. So we're having technologies that have attacked us. We had fires with down in California that even firefighters are scratching their heads saying there's no way in hell. There's a technology being used, okay? And so you can say what you want. It could be anything. But the fact is that, nobody can get their heads around it. So something's happening, nobody can answer. And since we don't have access to all the patents that are going on out there, we don't know what's in the name of national security. And usually every word they use means the opposite. So that stuff's been weaponized. But not only that, so there's that aspect, right, where you've got like the data, the knowledge, all that stuff's hidden. We don't know what the history of real science and technology is. We don't really know what the story is with space. We don't really know where we're at as far as what's really happened in our history over time, because the winner always writes it. And you had book burning during the Hitler time. So yeah, history is it's a major target because information is powerful, truth is powerful. Okay. So also weaponizing the past. Now we have the other element of how to use this whole empathy cultivation component, where they play on the fact of your history. So they may look at your cultural history. They may use and weaponize what they know about other cultures to get those cultures manipulated into doing things also. So you can create wars based on what they know about the history, and pull on your heartstrings to get that accomplished, okay? Thus creating revolutions inside of countries, along with money and minions, right? So, but they'll also pull at the heartstrings of, women have been suppressed for blah, 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 and they'll pull out that card. They'll like to play have the race card, that they'll pit different groups up against one another by pulling out their history and saying, you were oppressed back in this time frame, right? At this point in time. Okay. So that's part of weaponizing the past also. Just depends on which combination of factors they're putting it with. Okay, and it's your job to learn this so that you don't get played. Okay, circular conversations. Oh, I love this one. I love this one. It's making me cough. That's how much I love it. Okay, circular conversations. It is a conversation that starts in one place and ends up right back in that place. Literally. You come at them with a very solid logic reason for whatever, and they will talk to you until your eyeballs pop out and your jaw's on the floor, and you're so out of breath. So circular conversations goes right up there along with the attrition and exhaustion. They wear you out with words. And you can literally, your best bet with circular conversations, here's how you stop that. And boy, you are going to hear this all over politics. This is their favorite thing to do. In an hour-long conversation, they've said nothing. Nothing. And all they've done is spout off a whole bunch of talking points to trigger you, whether it's empathy cultivation or threatened loss or plausible deniability. But in the end, what they do is they just circle right back around to the topic. They don't answer anything. Nothing new is learned, okay, in circular conversations, and no result is achieved. They literally have just blown hot air up your you-know-what in a big conversation that's designed to make you tired of it and give up, okay? It's purely designed to get you to drop it. That's it. That's what it's for. And it's to just circle you out of whatever the hell it is that you had. So if you come at them with logic, they come at you with lots of crazy. And there's no end in sight, okay? So if you're trying to pin a politician down on anything, for example, or if you're trying to pin down anybody that's working the government and they are in this bracket of mind virus, there's good luck, okay? You're not going to get there. So your best bet is, you don't say anything. You just sit back and you listen and you observe it. This is one of the most powerful things. If you literally just forget all your emotions, drop them right out of just drop them on the floor, leave them in the suitcases, and just observe them without zero emotion. Purely just listen to the response you're getting. and observe their face while you're listening to them talk. It's super amazing when you just take your emotions out of it, when you stop thinking what you want the outcome to be and just literally purely observe them as if it was something on TV. You know how like you turn the sound off on the television and you just watch the actors and they look a lot less sincere and it all looks kind of strange sometimes. So if you just like watch their facial expressions, so you kind of just observe and watch. You can try just watching them because they'll go on for a while. And saying a whole lot of nothing. So you'll have time to just observe their facial expressions, and then you'll have time to just listen to this big bag of wind coming out of their mouths. Then when you're done, you go look up what have they actually done on that topic, and you're going to find nothing. If they've done anything, it's probably the opposite of what they were going to tell you they were going to do about it. And if they aren't, and if their actions are in alignment with their words, then great. But just know that things aren't always what they seem either. Okay, so something that looks like it could be good, you may find out later, it was really nicely covered up into do something that's in a much larger scale, very networked and worse. Okay. Inducing anxiety in others. That one's kind of obvious. They like to make people on edge, keeping them in their emotional state because that's how they make you a puppet. And they like to make people obsess. So let's say they pick any topic, say gender, for example, and they freak out about gender, or let's say they freak out. Let's just let's flip the other side around. So let's say they're freaking out about incoming populations. And they'll literally will just get you to where you won't think straight. So let's think about a wall. I'm gonna think about it neutrally. It can be used to keep out people that want to invade you, but it can also be used to keep you in, right? So there's people are just rush to build this thing, but they also need to keep in mind what's happening in the back end, what's going on right now. So you're like biometrics that they're trying to roll out. So it's like, okay, well, what's the real intention of this? Because these people are long-term thinkers. So yes, right now that could be real. That could actually be happening. Perhaps, if I'm saying completely open-minded here, but let's say the people that are coming in really aren't who they say they are. Let's say they're paid for actors that are coming in to do an actual invasion of the country. Okay, that could actually happen. Let's be realistic. Take all politics and emotion out of it. Is that possible? Absolutely, it's possible. But on the flip side, what if that invading force has actually been planned and plotted to make us build a wall so that now we are locked in, right? You got to look at it both sides, okay? That's all I'm saying. So people should be standing back and looking at it and saying, yes, this seems like a knee-jerk reaction, and I'm having my heartstrings pulled to do this thing. But on the other side of it, and if I'm going to take that action, then I also need to take the other action of making sure that I'm not allowing this other thing to become a reality either, where now I am the one in a prison, right? So we have to really look at things clearly, and if you're going to make a decision on something, then you also need to be vigilant about making sure that what's happening is happening and there's nothing else that's going on that's subversive in a longer term plan. There's a lot of people that are really long-term thinkers that want to control everybody. Okay, silent treatment. Silent treatment in the world scheme, it kind of rolls out a little differently. You screaming out to your politicians or trying to do petitions and it goes nowhere. I mean, that's part of it, right? You call your congressman. I've talked to people, I call my congressman all the time. Nothing ever happens. Okay, the people's voice not having a voice, that's kind of a big deal. But also there's this whole effort to silence people that don't agree and quieting them. It's more of a newer thing. I think it's why the whole freedom of speech thing does matter. Nobody likes to hear something they don't want to hear, but it's very, very dangerous to not be willing to hear the other side of an argument, because there's always there's always some truth in things, okay? There's always some truth on both sides. And the minute the conversation dies, you are in an echo chamber and you're in a very dangerous place, okay? Because now they can pull on your heartstrings all day long and there's nobody to tell you to try and help you. And part of the reason for silent treatment in a relationship setting is to keep you submissive, on edge. Nobody wants to be silenced, and so they get really upset, and so it's another form of crazy making, and it makes them comply. Okay, so if you're in a relationship and the person won't talk to you for a week, and they've already isolated you from everyone you know, because that's a big tactic that they use. So isolating and silence, those things go together, and that's how you can see how a lot of the where we have them silencing people, even running algorithms to what seems harmless to run an algorithm that would couple you up with people that are like-minded is actually it's a double-edged sword, because now they've put you into an echo chamber where you're only with people that agree on the same things. Okay, so you're not getting any new information. You're literally in a giant room of circular conversation where there's no new information coming in. And that, in a sense, is a form of silence, but it's a form of isolation as well, because the other side of the aisle, those voices that had information that might have been really critical to any decision making that you'd like to do, that's been taken away from you. So if you went to a buffet and they said, I'm sorry, you can only have the dessert menu, you can only eat from the dessert section, at first that would seem really awesome. But in the end, you realize this isn't healthy at all. Like, all I'm getting is crap. I'm only eating junk food. It seems amazing. You're like, sweet, cheesecake. This is awesome. I got all the desserts to myself. This is fantastic, right? And the next thing you know, you got diabetes. So, what seems like a great idea at first, wherever you cut out diversity, you've created a problem for yourself. And that's where GMOs come in, right? Because when you clone the same thing over and over again, you not only, you're cutting out the diversity of that, you're cutting out the ability for that thing to adapt and be able to defend itself. So if you have something that would normally maybe wipe out, let's say in a population grouping of diverse genetics, let's say there's a certain kind of a virus that comes sweeping through. It's probably not going to kill everybody. Why? Because there are going to be some people that are resistant. In a GMO setting, everything's the same, so it all gets wiped out. It's all dead meat, right? It's all gone. So where you take away the diversity, you've created a weakness there, and an ability to control or completely decimate with ease. Okay. So that's kind of how the silent treatment thing works. That's why it's really important, for no matter how annoying somebody may be, no matter how much you may disagree with them, it's really important that they have the ability to convince you otherwise, or at least to try. Okay. So yes, I mean, agree to disagree. That's what we do in contracts. I live in a world where nobody agrees. Ever. Okay? That's the world I live in. But I learned some stuff from them, and they learned some things from me, and in the end, we have to resolve our differences. Why? Because the job depends on it. Because the work depends on it. Because getting through the day depends on it. And that's just the way the business world works, and that's the way people every day kind of have to work. You wouldn't be able to just walk through and as fun as it sounds at first, if you had a mute button and a remote control, just like that remote movie with I can't think of his name, but anyway, if you could just walk through and just mute every person that you didn't want to hear from, that would seem really cool at first, but eventually you'd be like, you know what, I kind of miss hearing what that person had to say, or you know what, things are just kind of boring now. It's kind of an echo chamber, and that's what it is. That's what they're creating. But it's to keep you isolated. And it silences different opinions and different thought and free thought, which is never healthy, okay? Disappearing acts. This is, I'm trying to think about this one. Disappearing acts in the world setting. It seems to mostly be money. The disappearing act seems to be mostly with money and resources, from what I can see. We really don't know where it's going. We really don't know where it all went. We're still trying to figure it out, and it's very, very frustrating. We do have people, that are coming and going from the world scene, and that's also kind of strange, because you're never really sure if they're gone, or it's really interesting. It's super strange. Even if some of the JFK files that were released, even, it's like, oh, we thought Hitler was dead. He may not have been dead. It's like, we don't really know. It's all just such a big game. And so there is kind of a level of that where you have all these actors that seem to be in and out on the political world scene, and they disappear for a while and they come back, and that's kind of interesting. But mostly they just keep disappearing our money and our resources, and nobody knows where it's going. There's a lot of talk that it's going underground. Who knows? We don't really know. In a narcissist relationship, typically what the disappearing is for is because they're usually out doing things that are up to no good, okay? And they really operate from the shadows a lot. And so what you got is just really untrustworthy people. And part of the reason they do the disappearing act is also to make you crazy. So it's just typically what it means is it's just a bunch of shady crap going on. And that's where the disappearing act stuff comes in. It's a card they often pull, sometimes on purpose, sometimes it's not. Most of the time it's just because they go where they want and they can care less what we think. And they take what they want and they can care less what we think. Okay, one of their favorite cards to pull, this is the next one, and one of the most prominent and the easiest to see, is the shame guilt card. They will shame you, they will guilt you. So basically, let's say you were to take them on with the topic. They'll turn it around back on you, pull a topic out of thin air, and make you feel bad. Usually it's to shut a conversation down, but it's also to get you to feel like you're so unworthy, that you're lucky to have them, and that they're to help you, and that they know better and you know nothing. Okay, that's the point. That's why they do it. Okay, so it's really about making you less than, so that they can assert their power over you, and it makes you want to give it over. Because you feel like you're so unworthy, or so stupid, or so inferior, blah, 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 fill in the blanks, or that your race is bad, your gender is bad, your people are bad, your country is bad. It doesn't matter. But the point is, on the world stage, we went and we destroyed all these countries. We should pay to rebuild it. There's all this stuff, except for they're the ones that went in and they destroyed it, and now they're making money and they're using, disappearing to take that money, do who knows what with it, etc., etc. And so, but the fact is that they shame and they guilt the populations, or they shame the individuals. They'll also combine shaming and guilting with character assassination, obviously. But they do it because they need you to give your power away, and they need you to give your power away to them. And so they make themselves seem amazing, and they make you feel stupid, and they make you feel like you're a terrible person. In an argument, this is where they weaponize, this is where they use the weaponized past card, and they'll play that. Even at a relationship level, what you'll end up with, well, you've done all these horrible things to me, and don't you remember when you did this and that and the other? And then we bring in circular conversations, so they'll talk you to the ground. So all you're doing is you're being shamed, guilted, you're being, your past has been weaponized against you. They're rubbing it in your face, and they're doing it in a circular conversation so that they can wear you down with the attrition and exhaustion, so that eventually you give up, and whatever it is you came to the table with, no matter how logical, no matter how much data you bring to the table, in the end, you're the bad guy, your character assassinated. And in a public scene, not only have you gone through all of those things, but now they're going to call all their minions, and they're going to have them character assassinate you and target you for public destruction. This is the tactics, guys. I wish I was kidding. This is probably going to be multiple recordings because it's so complicated how this works and what they do. So, man, it's brutal, right? I think we'll stop with this one because shame guilt card is like one of the most common ones. That's the one where you get just completely played. Because who doesn't have, some kind of weak spot? And that's part of where research comes in too, because they research to figure out, well, what kinds of things these people feel bad about, and they get to you on an individual level, and then what they'll do is they'll they use advertisements also, right? So if you feel fat, you should buy this product. Well, they find a way to politicize that as well, so that they can find different people in different groups, and then they'll market to you, whether it's marketing a candidate or marketing a product, doesn't really matter, or they'll market a certain kind of law or whatever they want to get into place. And they will move it through those different groups, but they'll sell it to them in different ways. And since they are in a echo chamber, it's very easy for them to do that, because then they've already isolated you, but you don't realize it because you've been categorized and put into buckets online. But you don't know that. You just know that one certain person isn't really talking to you as much, or you're not seeing their posts, and maybe you just completely forget about it. Then they've actually gone so far as to actually like disconnect people from followers. They've shrunk down people that were subscribed so that people wouldn't think that those were very popular sites. Whatever they can get, but they'll allow other people that are, this is a lost cause group, so we'll allow these 1,000 people to stay connected to this group. So we create their echo chamber. So they're not really talking to anybody. Now, there's also something that's called shadow banning, and what's happening there is your post may be seen by some, but they're not going to be seen by all. And you don't even know it because you're not on the receiving end to receive it. So it'd be like sending an email that's going through a filter, that's getting plugged up, that's only sending the email out to certain people that fall into your grouping, right? So it's kind of like Black Mirror TV show where you have all these controls, and your voice is basically, it's kind of like it's created these social groupings. And part of that's because of wanting to create a new credit system based on a social scoring system. So you won't be able to get food, you won't be able to get work, you won't be able to get a job because you have a shitty social score. And yes, that's actually the game plan. And then you would buy and sell through biometrics, which they just rolled out in India apparently. And so that's kind of the goal. And really that's so that they can create this really horrible social system structure that they're rolling out right now under your nose. And, even as cool as the wall concept, for some people may be, they need to realize that on the back end, what are they rolling out? They're rolling out biometrics, which is the same kind of thing that India was doing. And they've prepared themselves for a social scoring type system over here. Does that get off the ground? Well, that depends on us, right? Waking up and snapping the hell out of it. So as long as you're in those little social circles, what seemed like a great idea has now become a prison. It's a prison within a prison. Because you have the prisons of the electronic systems that are all around us all the time. You have the prison of the social groups that they've crafted for us. And now there's isolation. What was a free internet is not, I don't know how long they've been working on this for quite some time. So, and it's slow and it's gradual and you won't even see it, because they're doing it behind the scenes, and because they need plausible deniability, they're not going to just come right out and say it. They're going to do it behind the scenes, and they'll say it out loud to each other. So people that are paying attention, to those networks or groups where, communications are, because they think we're stupid. So they'll talk to each other pretty openly. But they don't really, they won't come out and tell you like on TV or something, but they'll tell it to each other as if, because they think no, everyone else is so stupid they won't notice, except for people are noticing and paying attention, because a lot of people are like, none of this makes sense. And as people are waking up on an individual level, whether it's from a relationship or whether they're just snapping out of it, they're starting to understand and see that all this stuff's been done. It's been done very quietly. It's been done very, very quietly. Social scoring system, if you can imagine that on the shame guilt card, how long would it take you to shut up and say nothing online before you could get your social score to where you could afford, get a job? That's a very, I want you to really, this is actually the way they've been headed. Because when you look at who's in charge, the tactics I'm telling you, these are the people that are running everything right now. I mean, if you're seeing how diabolical these techniques are that they're using, and I'm telling you exactly what they do. And I'm not done yet. I'm only a third of the way done with this list. Okay? And just know that these tactics, these are a lot of the same tactics that like the military has in their torture technique book. Like what their methods are that have been disclosed. Very, very similar. Gaslighting, crazy making, get them to trust you, threaten them. I mean, it's just some of those same techniques. I actually had a copy of one, I think it was from Robert Duncan's second book. he had a Deciphering the Matrix book, which was his first, but it was free and it was online. I don't think he's been heard from again. I don't know. Last I heard it, he was missing. And that was in like 2005. And then he had released a second book, and it's his second book that has the techniques of what the military torture techniques were that were unclassified. And it's really along the same lines. So after you hear these videos, then you can go maybe get that book if you want to, and you can look and compare, and you'll see for yourself. It's pretty impressive. And you'll see the tech, which brace yourself, because you won't even begin to believe just how bad they went too far, way too far. And we let them, frankly. So anyway, okay, so that's where I'm at. We're gonna pause here at Shame Guilt, because it's the best one they have, and then I'll come back to this in phase 2. Bye.